This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerated. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. I had the best words. God bless the United States.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Oh no, Sam Cedar! What a fucking nightmare!
Dumps, big massive dumps.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. It's Thursday. I don't know why, but it feels like Friday. But it's Thursday. We got a fantastic show for y'all today. I actually, right before the show, hello, Raiders, by the way. TYT rating with 179. Welcome to the show. We're just getting started here. We got some fantastic stuff. I actually came from watching Dr. Rashad Ritchie obliterate a right-wing moron. I loved it. Fantastic show. Great, indisputable. Dr. Rashad Ritchie. Absolutely. So, like I said, we got a great show. We are going to talk about Meghan McCain. I'm going to give her a proper send-off from The View. We got an oil lobbyist giving up the goods, telling us what we already know, but still, I still want to talk about it. Very important that we do so. We got Capitol Rioter. Turns out there is a good reason. I know I've seen some disagreement, like, oh, God, why are you still talking about January 6th, dude? Well, it turns out that one of the rioters, the insurrectionists, was stockpiling weapons so that he could go on another rampage. So, yeah. We are also going to talk about the Supreme Court and the recent ruling against voting rights. So, important stuff. It's going to be a good show, so stay here. Like and share the stream if you haven't already. I do appreciate it when you do that. Helps the show out greatly. With that, before I get into it, I just want to give a shout out to Toolman Tim 51, who is recovering from cancer. So I want to give Tim a shout out here. Glad you're doing better. Glad you're doing well. That you're in remission. And, all of our thoughts are with you. All right. That said, let's jump in. Let's start with Meghan McCain. Or Meghan McShane. That's what I like to call her. But are you aware of who her dad is? Do you know? Do you know? You will. Oh, you all will. Okay. Anyway. I'm in a ridiculous mood. Where is it?
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
McCain. Yes, down goes Meghan McCain. I know. If we had a ladies and gentlemen, we got her. That would have helped out. But hey, Meghan McCain. She's done. She's done with The View. She's actually earlier today announced her departure from ABC's The View. In fact, this is from an earlier report. Meghan will announce her resignation on Thursday's show, which she did. A Disney source told DailyMail.com. I know Daily Mail, right? We have tried to keep her, but she is adamant that now is the right time for her to leave. She will finish at the end of July 2021. So, yeah, she's going to finish out like the last month, but essentially, there you go. She's basically done. A person close to McCain then told Fox News, quote, it was her decision, which she made apparently without telling any of her co-hosts, which kind of shows you like the sort of backstage drama that they had on that show. Let's be honest. And I think that's really important because I had this feeling, and I'm sure a lot of you had the same feeling, that she is going to come out a few months from now and talk about how she was canceled, how she was pushed out of that. Oh my God. The left, they pushed me out. Joy Behar, she was so mean to me. She pushed me out of the show. I had to leave. It was such a toxic environment. You don't understand. You don't understand. Of course, the reason that she's going to say that, because it's not really true. Yeah, sure, it was kind of a toxic atmosphere, but that's because Meghan McCain couldn't help but be a toxic person. But when you come out and you say that you were canceled by the left, instantly everybody's going to love you in the conservative sphere. That's important because right now, John McCain, not exactly popular among conservatives. Once again, when he was alive, he actually did save the ACA, which Republicans despise, even though they still don't quite understand what it is and what it does. But this is par for the course for Republicans. And so not only is it good for her rehabilitation among right-wing circles, it's incredibly lucrative. So, we're talking news appearances, or maybe a book, something like that. It will be very lucrative. Now, Page Six also reported that McCain's expected departure comes as something of a surprise, given that back in January, she said this. This was on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, quote, because whether we like it or not, I'm not going anywhere on the show. Joy's not going anywhere on the show. We all have to live and coexist together, just like Americans right now, which is a little deeper of an answer, but we're all going to try and coexist, and I really want to have us all move forward. Well, that didn't take long, that's for sure. And look, maybe I'm reading too much into it, and this is my conspiratorial mind at work, but she's saying, I'm not going anywhere, and then leaving after 6 or so months, that's kind of sus. Like, real sus. And understand, too, that even though it's probably not true, that she would be pushed out or, whatever she's going to claim, if I'm correct, that she was pushed out or canceled by the people at The View, by Disney, whatever. Remember, conservatives will believe anything. So if she says that she was canceled and forced out, well, they're going to believe her. So now I've got a couple of responses here. Just online, just a couple of fun tweets that I want to share about this. One person says, for the first time ever, Meghan McCain is trending online for a good reason. And she did. Another person says, why is she quitting now? Why not 3 years ago? Why was she ever on air? Well, we know the reason. Do you know who her father is? And finally, Ms. Betty Bowers says this. It took Meghan McCain 3 years to realize the View's hairstylists were playing viciously escalating pranks on her 5 days a week. Look, I'm not saying that she's right, but she's right. Yikes. True. And so to kind of encapsulate her contribution to The View, I would like to show you some of her most powerful and inspirational quotes put together. Roll it.
My father, 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 my father's my father, 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 my father's my father, my father, my father, my father's my father, my father's my father, 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 and my father.
Godspeed, princess. We're going to miss you. But not really. Sad. Okay. So, look, that's the ridiculous segment. Then we get into more important stuff. I just had to get that out of the way. All right. Somebody's dog is losing it now. True. I apologize. I don't mean to do animal abuse here. Sorry. Apologies, but let's do it. Let's go on to the next story. As areas all over the world burn as a result of climate change, for example, the Pacific Northwest, a lobbyist for big oil has revealed that his company not only has aggressively fought against science, but also owns approximately 11 U.S. senators that he relies on to push his pro-fossil fuel agenda. And this is the true bipartisanship in Congress right now. So before I get into the details, I'm just going to have to say this. I'm not surprised. Of course, you're not surprised either. Y'all are the smartest audience online. I love every one of you. And you know this. You already know that fossil fuel companies and lobbyists own most of Congress. Nonetheless, this is good evidence of what we already knew, what we already suspected. And so let's get into it. This was actually captured by some insider work from Greenpeace UK. Their investigators posed as people who were looking to hire a Washington, D.C. lobbyist for an unspecified major client. And so they approached Mr. Keith McCoy, a senior ExxonMobil lobbyist who agreed to speak to them over Zoom. And a lot of this was very, very revealing. The video that was released, and I'm going to put a link to it in YouTube, in the description for their YouTube link. To this video, I suggest that you watch it in full. It's an excellent report. I'm going to show a little bit of it just to give you a little taste. Take a look.
I liken it to fishing, right? You have bait, you throw that bait out, it's all these opportunities that you use, and to use the fishing analogy again, just to kind of reel them in, because they're a captive audience. They know they need you, and I need them.
Senators pressed to do Exxon's bidding behind closed doors.
You want to be able to go to the chief. Yeah. And so the chief knows you, that you can go to the chief and say, look, we've got this issue. We need Congressman so-and-so to be able to either introduce this bill. We need him to make a floor statement. We need him to send a letter. Yeah. You name it. We've asked for everything. Joe Manchin, I talk to his office every week. He is the kingmaker, and he's not shy about sort of staking his claim early and completely changing the debate.
Legal declarations show that Senator Manchin has received tens of thousands of dollars from ExxonMobil and its trade associations. Keith McCoy names 10 other senators as crucial to ExxonMobil. Senators Mark Kelly, Chris Coons, Shelley Moore Capito, Kirsten Sinema, John Tester, Maggie Hassan, John Barrasso, Steve Daines, John Cornyn, and Marco Rubio. All bar Kelly and Hassan have taken money from Exxon totaling $117,000.
I love that. Not the fact that, of course, that our Congress is bought and paid for, but that somebody's actually talking about it. that this has made pretty big news in media. So I can't wait till more people talk about this, till more actual mainstream sources cover this. It's a pretty big deal. So now there was more that was revealed. For one, the company, of course, secretly fought against legislative action on climate change using particular third-party organizations. Of course, you've got think tanks that go and muddy the waters. Not only that, but they also regard trade bodies like the American Petroleum Institute as quote-unquote whipping boys in order to avoid public scrutiny on Capitol Hill. In fact, here's what McCoy had also said about, when you have a CEO, for example, that is called up for questioning. Somebody like, for example, Katie Porter or Elizabeth Warren or AOC would call, try to call these people into Congress and in front of a hearing, talk about climate change, and they refuse. In fact, here's what he said about that. Quote, "We don't want it to be us to have these conversations, especially in a hearing. It's getting our associations to step in and have those conversations and answer those tough questions and be, for the lack of a better term, the whipping boy for some of these members of Congress. There was something we were working on earlier this week where our CEO was invited to a hearing from a member of Congress who we know is just going to rip him to shreds when he goes there. So we look at it and we say, well, why us? Why us indeed? I mean, why answer questions that we know are complete and look, the answers that we give are going to be bullshit. So why even put ourselves there? We know we're bullshitting. We know we're lying about the climate. Oh no, climate change. We're doing absolutely everything we can to fight climate change. Yes. When actually, no, you're not doing anything to fight climate change. You're doing everything you can to line your pockets. Because that's what a corporation is for. 100%. Now, there's more. McCoy also talked about how this successfully lobbied to remove or diminish climate change measures from President Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure and jobs bill. They told the congressman, quote, just stick to the roads and the bridges. Not stick to the waterfalls, though. Or maybe they should stick to the waterfalls before they get polluted. But basically, hey, members of Congress, be a good little bitch and do our bidding. That's what we pay you to do. So go ahead and take these things that we find objectionable out of Biden's already pretty mediocre, pretty weak sauce infrastructure bill for us. And they did. And they did. This is why right now the government will do next to nothing on climate change, because you have these people, these corporations that have bought our politicians. That's it. It's insane. The fact that we live in a system right now which allows these lobbyists to go and literally pay our politicians for access to them, for a meeting. And guess what? Those politicians, of course, they're going to listen to the people that are signing their paychecks. It's insane that the Supreme Court can sit there and look at that and say, oh, no, that's not corruption. They're just talking to the congressman. That's all they're doing. They're just talking to them. This technically is legalized prostitution in a way. I mean, when you think about it. Oh, but we're giving them money for our time. I mean, and they're basically using that to screw us, the rest of us, over. So, yeah, the people who are getting fucked in this situation, it's us. It's us. So, yes, not only that, but of course they're also going to listen to the lobbyists when there is a gigantic revolving door in our government. After you serve your donors, and you do a good job serving the donors, and you make sure to block any sort of progressive legislation that might actually hurt the bottom lines of these companies, then you get to work for them in a super cushy job that pays really, really well. Lobbying, you might even come back and lobby your friends, your colleagues over lunch. That's what's going on here. This is one gigantic circle jerk as our planet fries. And that's what's happening. And the fact that it's legal, that this is considered legal in this country, and not only legal, but par for the course. Well, of course, you've got to spend all this money. Of course, you got to buy politicians. Fucked up. Totally fucked up. Beyond. There's more. Here's what McCoy said. Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes, I would argue that they've argued against all the science when it came to climate change, even their own findings. But he says, did we hide our science? Absolutely not. Did we join some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts? Yes, that's true, but there's nothing illegal about that. We're looking out for our investments. We're looking out for our shareholders. What more proof do you need? Corporations run our country. It is funny that we got Elon Musk that's talking about, oh, the AIs, the machines are going to take over, right? It's kind of already here. Honestly, corporations are legal entities that are essentially machines. They are machines. They've been created with one purpose: to maximize profit for shareholders at the expense of anyone else. Anybody that's living on this planet, because guess what? We're all affected by climate change. And if you're in the way of a pipeline, they get the cops to remove you. We saw that at Standing Rock. If your house is in the way, they're going to try to buy it. And if they can't buy it, if that doesn't work, if you're not selling, then they might get people in Congress, their lackeys, to try to remove you through eminent domain. If you try to stop them, they will crush you. These are not people. Corporations are not people, my friend. They are immoral, profit-making machines. Now, of course, McCoy was a little embarrassed after this Zoom call got out. Here's the statement. Quote, "My statements clearly do not represent ExxonMobil's positions on important public policy issues. While some of my comments were taken out of context," which ones? Which ones? "There's no excuse for what I said or how I said it." Weak. Super weak apology. Bullshit. ExxonMobil has been burying the science and muddying the waters on climate change for decades. They've been hiding the science. And they pay politicians to lie, to say that there are no climate change, that it's not happening. Climate change isn't happening. What are you talking about? I can go outside and I can go get a snowball and I can bring it into the Senate chambers. Hey, look up. What are you talking about? There's snow outside. You idiot. There's no climate change. And now it's, of course, well, climate's always been changing. That's who they are. That's who they are. They buy our politicians to sandbag progress, even knowing the toll that it's taking on our environment. Seattle has been burning. And it's not from Antifa, okay? It's from climate change. And Republicans, by the way, Republicans were all about, oh my God, I can't believe we're burning down blocks. But when California is on fire with wildfires, as a result of human-induced climate change, Republicans are suddenly silent about this. Weird. Or they blame something else. Wonder why. We know the answer. But more importantly, I think we know the solution to this. You got to get the money out of politics. It is the ultimate poison. The fact that we have this in our system, that we have a system where these companies can buy and sell congressmen. It's got to change. If it doesn't, then we're not going to ever be able to do anything meaningful on climate change before it's too late. On one hand, it's 40 to 50 degrees hotter than normal in some places, but on the other hand, Texas got snow. Both sides. Good comment there from the chat. Let me just add that a lot of what's going on, Texas, when they got their snowstorm, they were unprepared for climate change. Portland, same thing. They were unprepared for the variations, the wild swings in temperatures that we get as a result of climate change. And so Their infrastructure, their roads are buckling. Streetcar wires literally melting as a result of this. And they still want to pretend that it doesn't exist. The world's on fire, and they don't give a damn. Because they got their money. And by the way, before the worst happens, a lot of these assholes are going to be dead. They're not going to see the damage that they're causing. Totally fucked. Okay. Moving on. Let's go to Republican terrorists. This one's a doozy. A Capitol insurrectionist who was released on a pretrial bond has been caught stockpiling weapons. Federal prosecutors are now seeking to revoke the pretrial release of a former police officer, Thomas Robertson, who was charged in the January 6th Capitol insurrection after he had purchased 34 guns. No, he was in the insurrection. He went to court, and they said, okay, we'll let you go if you don't buy guns. And then he goes and buys 34 guns. Robertson was ordered by the judge not to possess firearms following his arrest on several charges stemming from the insurrection, including felony disruption of an official proceeding, misdemeanor disorderly conduct in a restricted building. Robertson and another Rocky Mount, Virginia officer, Jacob Fracker, were fired in the wake of the arrests after they posted photos of themselves inside the Capitol and on social media. Prosecutors filed a motion to revoke Robertson's release on Wednesday after the FBI agents served a search warrant in his home where they had found a pipe bomb inside of a box labeled booby trap, in addition to numerous boxes of ammunition. I mean, somebody hears a booby. This guy. Authorities also tracked online gun purchases made by Robertson, who was allegedly storing his arsenal at a local firearms dealership. Interesting. Well, I mean, technically I can't have guns at my home, but I can store them somewhere else so that I can go and access my arsenal when I want to use it. So now, his arsenal, interesting note on that, because he did plan to use it. In fact, here's what the prosecutors wrote about this. The defendant's possession of an explosive device and firearms, coupled with his extreme rhetoric, advocating for violence, indicating no remorse, illustrate that the pending charges are unlikely to serve as a deterrent to future violence. For these reasons, the defendant should be detained. That violent rhetoric, of course, comes from his own social media posts. Again, let me just tell you again. These guys are the FBI's biggest friend because they're just out and open with it. It really shows you how unfamiliar they are with dealing with the consequences of their own actions. That they go and say this stuff. And let me give you an example. He said, quote, this is on Facebook, "The picture of senators cowering on the floor with genuine fear on their faces is the most American thing I've ever seen in my life. The only voice these people will now listen to is violence." Charming. Very charming. He added, CNN and the left are just mad because we actually attacked the government, who is the problem, and not some random small business. The right in one day took the effing U.S. Capitol. Keep poking us. Okay. Yeah, sure, we'll keep poking you. Great. Well, you know, you can really tell where he gets his news. The far right. And it's also funny because here's the thing. We in the left actually do have a problem with the government. The government's corrupt. It's owned by big corporations and uses our tax money to bomb brown people overseas and steals oil from them and doesn't do anything about climate change. It's going to kill us all. And, you know, all of that stuff. The left is not for any of those things. But these chuds think that, oh no, CNN and the left were aligned and, were in support of looting and rioting, which, by the way, you also looted and rioted. I'm just saying. Not only that, but they also think the biggest problem of the government is that it's quote unquote too woke. Ah, yes. Wonderful. Here's the thing. The earth is on fire. The rich don't pay their fair share of taxes. The government's controlled by billionaires. And this dipshit thinks that invading the Capitol on behalf of the king of dipshits, Donald Trump.
Big, massive dumps.
Big, massive dumps. Okay? He thinks that reinstating that guy is going to fix his problems. Come on. Come on, man. There's more. On June 10th, Robertson posted a screenshot of Department of Justice website documenting the charges against him on gunbroker.com, the auction site where he had been purchasing many of the weapons. Another user of the website had posted the question, "Are they proud too?" Robertson responded, "I sure as fuck am." Well, there you go. And he is proud. He then wrote, quote, "I said before, they're trying to teach us a lesson. They have, but it's definitely not the intended lesson. I have learned that if you peacefully protest, that you will be arrested, fired, be put on a no-fly list, have your name smeared, an address released by the FBI, so every loon in the U.S. can send you hate mail. I've learned very well that if you dip your toe in the Rubicon, cross it hard and violent, and play for all the marbles." Wow, this guy sounds like he has no marbles left. That he's lost them all. Maybe on the Capitol building. I don't know. But it is kind of ironic that he's talking about, peaceful protest. What about January 6th was peaceful? And look, when it comes to right-wing protest, the cops never get involved. They're too busy cracking heads at Black Lives Matter protests, which are overall 93% peaceful. And he's also, of course, complaining about the left. But what's funny is that he's actually getting a taste of what it's like to be a leftist in this country. Ironically. Again, look at what happened at Standing Rock. Okay, look at what happened at Occupy Wall Street. Look at what happened at any leftist anti-capitalist protest. This is how they treat the left. This is how they treat black protesters. By comparison, what happened at the Capitol on January 6th with these guys was actually pretty tame. It was a tame response. And why do I say that? Because there's numerous video of police officers letting them in. And, of course, they went in, they smeared shit all over the walls, all over the floors. They let them do vandalism, theft, and they, of course, they milled around, talking about how they want to hang
Mike Pounds,
or hang Mike Pants or whatever. And understand that if this had been Black Bloc, it would have been a massacre, complete and utter massacre. So, and understand, like Ashley Babbitt. By the way, and it's, of course, the conservatives can bring that up, Ashley Babbitt was shot by a police officer. She knew what she was doing. She fucked around and she found out. And apparently now, so will this guy. All right. Let me go here and thank some people first before I get to the next couple of stories. Let's see. Don't mind me, just pushing buttons. Crazy Hawaiian and PA, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub to Barkley. Rob Lobster 120, thank you for the 100 bits. Thank you for all the new follows. Crazy Hawaiian and PA, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you're giving me all these follows. Thank you so much again for that raid from TYT. Y'all are amazing. Thank you for sticking around for this show. I do appreciate that. Let's go over here and look at the YouTubes. Oh, wonderful. Thank you for all those. Wow, it's a pretty big views day today, so awesome. All right. Let's get back into the show. It appears the Supreme Court has once again gutted voting rights. So now this was a 6-3 vote with the conservative majority that voted all along ideological lines. They found that Arizona's new restrictive voting laws were totally fine, didn't violate any section of the Voting Rights Act, specifically Section 2. So now overall, the court basically sided in favor of laws that would ban ballot harvesting, as well as one law that allows the state to throw out any ballots cast in the wrong precinct. So now a federal appeals court had previously struck down both of those provisions in Arizona, ruling that they had an unequal impact on minority voters and that there was no evidence of fraud that would have justified their use. So, of course, that's the argument that you hear from conservatives. Hey, oh, look at a massive voter fraud. That's why, well, we have to, we have to pass all these laws that to prevent the fraud. Yeah, okay. And so the Supreme Court ended up reinstating these state laws, declaring that unequal impact on minorities in this context was relatively minor, that other states have similar laws, and that the states don't have to wait for fraud to occur before enacting laws to prevent it. So understand, conservatives can make up a situation where they think, oh my God, this person could possibly do voter fraud. Therefore, we are now going to pass a law based on that assumption that somebody's going to use this to be able to do voter fraud, even though we have no evidence of voter fraud or this being used to do voter fraud. We're going to pass these laws anyway. And if they happen to affect the black population in any of the states that we do it, or the minority population, well, sad day for them. I mean, golly gee, who would have seen that one coming, right? Writing the dissent, Justice Elena Kagan accused the majority of, quote, yet again rewriting the Voting Rights Act, a law, she noted, designed to bring about the end of discrimination in voting. Honestly, the Voting Rights Act hasn't been the same since Section 5 was gutted years ago. But here's what she wrote. Never before has a statute done more to advance the nation's highest ideals. Few laws are more vital in the current moment, yet in the last decade, this court has treated no statute worse. As I mentioned, Section 5 required state and local governments with a history of racial discrimination in voting to get approval from the Justice Department for any changes, any laws in voting procedures. That was something that was incredibly important because, as we saw, as soon as these Section 5 was struck down, you had all of these new voter ID laws. You had all this new, voter restrictions on voting. When that provision was struck down, as NPR explains, the only protections for voting rights that remained in the law were Section 2. Now all that's left is the section banning vote dilution in redistricting based on race. So why does this matter if, according to the majority, this only played a minor role? Well, NPR continues to explain, though Section 2 has largely been used to prevent minority vote dilution and redistricting, importantly, it does bar voting procedures that result in a denial or abridgment of the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color. So the Arizona case was viewed as particularly important because it was the first time the court dealt with the claim of vote denial under Section 2 and how to evaluate it. Kagan wrote in her dissent, this court has no right to remake Section 2. Maybe some think that vote suppression is a relic of history. And so the need for a potent Section 2 has come and gone. But Congress gets to make that call Because it has not done so, the court's duty is to apply the law as it is written. The law is not the law that confronted one of the country's most enduring wrongs, pledged to give every American of every race an equal chance to participate in our democracy, and now stands as the crucial tool to achieve that goal. That law of all laws deserves the sweep and power Congress gave it. That law of all laws should not be diminished by this court. Now, again, that's the dissent. Unfortunately, we have a conservative Supreme Court. Turns out elections do have consequences. I'm just saying. Voter suppression is not over. Just like racism isn't over. What we have are Republican governors that do not want to lose. And Republican governments all over the country, local governments, as well as Senate seats, House seats. You have Republicans that don't want to lose, and so they target voting. So they target minority neighborhoods. So they target traditionally Democratic voters, the poor, the elderly, students. And they do this. And by the way, these laws are not there to combat fraud. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals had ruled previously that there was actually no record of fraud and that there was evidence these two provisions ended up denying many minorities the right to vote. The appeals court noted, for instance, the ballot collectors were needed in some large rural and remote parts of the state. It pointed, for instance, to the Navajo Nation, an area the size of West Virginia, where there are few post offices or postal routes, and where people without cars often have no way to send their ballots without collectors picking them up. And that's why ballot harvesting is important. Where you have to have people to collect these ballots from people who can't make it to the polls or who can't, make it, deliver those ballots. That's why it's important. But again, this isn't about fraud because there is no voter fraud. There never was massive voter fraud. This is all about denying people their right to vote, their right to be able to be involved in the political process. In fact, GOP lawyers kind of outed themselves. Mask off. They admitted during the oral arguments of the case that the Republican legislators' motive in enacting the Arizona voting restrictions was less anti-fraud and more political. Quote, not having such restrictions puts us at a competitive disadvantage, lawyer Michael Carvin said on behalf of the Republican Party. Politics is a zero-sum game, and every law they get through in unlawful interpretations of Section 2 hurts us. Now, they say it's unlawful because they have to make that argument. But notice what they're saying. Yeah, the more people vote, the less chance we have of winning. So, of course, we have to put this stuff, these barriers up because we're not popular. Our policies are not popular. We are, our party is basically hinging on white grievance. This is what we run our entire election strategy on. White grievance, fear of black people, fear of immigrants, fear, fear, fear. That's really what it's all about. And obviously, that doesn't resonate with the American people. Not only that, but of course, look at their policy positions. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulation. That's really all they run on. The Republican Party right now is a massive money funneling scheme to wealthy corporations. And they use racism and bigotry in order to entice people, as well as voter suppression and gerrymandering to keep the kind of voters that they don't want going to the polls home. And that's what it's all about. They cheat. This is cheating. Understand? By denying people the ability to vote, you are cheating in these elections. So again, you have the poor, disabled, black people, Democrats, anybody that they can, that they believe is not going to vote for them, they're going to deny their right to vote so that they themselves can hold on to power. This is what Paul Weyrich, the godfather of the modern conservative movement, so famously said in his Goo syndrome speech. He said, quote, "I don't want everybody to vote. Our leverage in the elections quite candidly goes up as the voting populace goes down." Understand that if you actually believe that Republicans care about voting in democracy and integrity, you're either lying or you just haven't been paying attention to what's actually going on. You know what the real reasons are. The real reason for all these new laws is to stop Democrats from voting. All right. If you're not angry yet, you will be. Final story of the day. If you're an American, you may have noticed that healthcare is not just expensive, but also incredibly arbitrary when it comes to charges. For example, if you've ever looked at your bill after a hospital stay, you might see some things that catch your eye, that you might be a little bit confused about. Well, one woman found such a charge and was actually fighting her hospital over an insane charge. Now, the woman is named Claire Langry, and she had went to the emergency room for some pain for her abdomen. This was at Penrose Hospital. She received pain medication, morphine in this case, which is incredibly powerful. So that's curious. By the way, thank you, Benjamin Dixon, for the rate of 31. Welcome, Raiders. I'm just talking about how hospitals are doing some insane charges for their patients. So now she received morphine and an anti-nausea med delivered through IV, intravenous. She also underwent a CT scan of her abdomen and a series of tests. Hospital staffers eventually found that she was suffering from a ruptured ovarian cyst, and after a few days, the pain went away and she felt better. Then the bill came. Oh boy. So now this person has insurance. So this woman had insurance through Anthem Blue Cross through her mother's network as a pediatric nurse practitioner in Northern California. That bill was $18,735.93. Now, insurance paid a rather large chunk of that, as they're supposed to. But when looking through her bill, she found two $722 fees for a nurse to push drugs through her IV. So push a plunger, that'll be $722.50, please. That's insane. That process literally takes seconds. Now, Anthem's negotiated charges were for $6,999 for the total treatment. Anthem paid $5,578.30, and the Langrys ended up owing about $1,200 to the hospital, plus additional bills for radiologists and other care, and of course the $150 copay. So, yeah, that's a lot of money. I mean, again, if the negotiated charge and the fact that they can negotiate this down says something, it says that it's really not worth the amount that they're putting up, that they're literally charging for these very simple things. But boy, $18,000, you could almost buy a new car for what the hospital tried to charge the insurance company. Insane. By the way, again, the insurance negotiated that down, paid about $5,000 of it, and yet they're still left with $1,200. And by the way, this is at a time where half of all Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. So this is why half of all GoFundMe campaigns are for medical bills. So, broken system. So now here's something I didn't know. According to NPR, as hospitals began to disaggregate charges for services once included in an ER visit, a hospitalization or surgical procedure there has been a proliferation of new fees in order to increase billing. In the health field, this is called unbundling and is analogous to how the airlines charge extra for each checked bag or for an extra row seat. So this is really messed up. This is medicine. This is somebody's health and well-being and life. And hospitals are trying to find additional ways to sandbag you with fees. Insane. This is the only place where we do something like this. Now, over time, the medical industry, this has led to separate fees for ever smaller components of care. A charge to put medicine into a patient's IV line, a push fee, happens to be one of them. And of course, the biggest charge on Claire's bill was actually for the CT scan. So now it turns out that CT scan cost $9,885.73. Now, normally, that's CT scans, yes, they're expensive. They don't cost that much. Turns out that this was about 3 times more expensive than it would have been if it hadn't been in the emergency room. But it wasn't that was most galling to Claire. Actually, she was pretty mad at the push fee because it seemed so absurdly ridiculous. Now, I look at this and I think it's all absurdly ridiculous. This is insane that we're doing this. It's insane that we're charging people so much and that people have to pay out of pocket for any of this stuff. Understand that this is why we pay more than the entire rest of the world when it comes to healthcare. Now, Claire said, quote, "That was ridiculous." She added that she had previously taken the anti-nausea drug that they had given her in a tablet form for the price of a cup of coffee without an IV. Quote, "It works really well. Why wasn't it even an option?" Well, we know why. It's because the hospital wanted to charge the insurance company as much money as possible. Now, in Colorado, the average charge for the code corresponding to Claire's first IV push nearly tripled since 2014, and the dollars hospitals usually get for the procedure had actually doubled. In Colorado Springs specifically, the cost for IV pushes rose even more sharply than it did statewide. A typical nurse in Colorado Springs makes about $35 an hour. At that rate, it would take nearly 21 hours to earn the amount of money Penrose charged for the push of a plunger that nearly took seconds, or at most, minutes. The hospital's charge for just one IV push was more than Claire's portion of the monthly rent in the home that she shares with roommates. In the end, as I mentioned, Anthem did not pay the push fees in its negotiated payment, but claims data showed in 2020, Penrose typically received upwards of $1,000 for the first IV push, and patients who didn't have an insured to miss such charges would be stuck with them. Colorado hospitals, on average, received about $723 for the same code, according to the claims database. To put it in context, Penrose initially charged more money for Claire's visit than the typical Colorado hospital would have charged for helping someone give birth, according to data published by the Colorado Division for Insurance. Even with that negotiated rate, it was $1,000 less than an average payment for having a baby. A little bit of medication, pushing a little bit of meds into the IV, the CT scan and all that, more than having a kid. Now, again, you might be thinking, this has got to be an insane mistake. No, in an email statement, Centura said it conducted a thorough review and determined that all charges were accurate, and went on to explain that an emergency room must be prepared for anything and everything that comes through the doors, requiring highly paid, trained staff, plus equipment and supplies. All of this, they say, adds up to large operating costs and can translate into patient responsibility. Or, as researchers have found, little stands in the way of hospitals charging through the roof, especially in a place like the emergency room, where a patient has few choices. Oh, of course. Your money or your life. I mean, that's the situation here. Now, a report from National Nurses United found that hospital markups have more than doubled since 1999, according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. In an email, Anthem called the trend of increasing hospital prices, quote, alarming and unsustainable. And yet, they're watching all of this happen. And again, this isn't just the hospitals. Yes, the hospitals are charging these prices, but the insurance companies, well, they're also responsible for this. Now, this is according to Gay Bai, an associate professor of accounting and health policy at Johns Hopkins, says that when patients see big bills, it isn't only the hospital's doing. A lot of it depends on the insurer. For one, the negotiated price depends on the negotiating power of the payer, in this case, Anthem. So now this is, why we say we should have single payer healthcare through the government as the insurer. The government would have massive amounts of power as the insurer to negotiate prices. And they would negotiate at a much more reasonable rate. But again, you have these insurance companies that don't have as much power as the federal government, obviously, and they do a much worse job at negotiation with the hospitals. In fact, here's what Bai said. Most insurance companies don't have a comparable negotiating or bargaining power with the hospital. Prices in a state like Michigan, where Bai said the UAW union covers a big proportion of Michigan patients, would look very different than those in Colorado. In many cases, insurance companies don't negotiate as aggressively as they can because it turns out that they earn profit from the percentage of the claims. The more expensive the actual payment is, the more money they, as a middleman, gets to extract. Of course. Though Anthem negotiated the push fees away, it did pay the hospital 30% more than the average level IV emergency department visit in Colorado that year, and paid quadruple what Medicare would allow for the CT scan. This is insane. So now, originally, Claire and her mother decided that they were going to fight this because of these charges. They wrote letters to the hospital. They searched for information on what the procedures should have cost. The cost of the IV pushes and CT scan infuriated them. The hospital wanted more than double for a CT than what top-rated hospitals typically charged in 2019. However, they had to quit because the threat of collections had worn them out. Ultimately, they ended up having to pay $1,420.45, most of that co-insurance. She said, eventually it got to the point where I was like, I don't really want to go to collections because this might ruin my credit score. Insane. And I keep saying that. I know I sound like a broken record, but there's no other way that you can look at this and not think broken. This is fundamentally broken. And there is one way to put a stop to this. Medicare for all. Medicare for all. Medicare for all. And I keep saying that. It keeps proven to be true. These insane costs are thanks to insurance companies being middlemen and hospitals jacking up prices. Because, again, you don't have powerful negotiation. And as I mentioned, insurance companies also take a cut. They both profit, you lose. Again, they're also negotiating with your money, the money that you pay them in premiums. Unsustainable. They profit, you lose. That's American healthcare right now. We are the only country in the industrialized world that does not have national health insurance program or nationalized healthcare. That does not make us better. It does, however, make us unique in how badly we treat our own people. Imagine if you could not afford that. How much it would wreck your life, wreck your credit. And you can imagine not having insurance. Well, for a lot of people, you don't have to imagine because you can't afford insurance. This system is wrong. It's abusive. It's violent. It's destructive, immoral, and needs to go. We need to have Medicare for all. No negotiation. Medicare for all. now. All right. Man. So, thank you all. That's the last story that I got for y'all today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like, share the stream if you haven't already. Tomorrow, I'm going to be co-hosting with John Adarola on the damage report. I'm really, really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to who we can throw in the trash. Cosby is an obvious one. Find out. Tune in to find out. It's 1 p.m. Eastern. It's on the TYT channel. Check that out. It's going to be super, super fun. Tune in for that. Consequently, I'm not going to have a stream tomorrow. We'll be back on Tuesday. Please, everybody, enjoy the holiday. Stay safe. Do not explode yourself. Please, don't be America and blow yourself up. All right? Be careful if you're going to handle fireworks. And also, make sure to take care of your four-legged friends. They're going to be very, very scared. And so make sure, take care of them. Yeah, all that stuff. All that good stuff. All right. Again, like and share, subscribe if you haven't already. Become a patron, patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf if you want to support us, if you can, if you're able to. Thank you again for all the bits and all the follows on Twitch. Twitch community, you are amazing. Also, YouTube community, also amazing. I love you all. And Facebook. Let's not forget my Facebook crew as well. So thank you to all of you. We're going to raid, so don't go anywhere. We are going to raid into, let's see. I think we're going to raid into left flank vets. So they're pretty based. And they fight against, of course, imperialism and for progressive causes. So we're going to do that. We're going to raid into left flank vets. All of you stay here for that. We'll start that process. And again, have an excellent weekend. Stay safe. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you later.
Please clap.
Dumps. Big, massive dumps.
Mike Pounds. Amazing.
Give me a break.
Sam Cedar, what a fucking nightmare.
Please clap.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.